All right, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. Today is November 18, Monday. This is the Planning Commission meeting. Let us start with a Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, I guess this isn't on the agenda.
All right, has everybody had a chance to look at the October 21st meeting minutes?
Yes,
And can I get a motion?
make a motion to accept the minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. So let's jump on real quick and have Raul.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. I wanted to take just a moment to introduce our new Capital Improvements Program Director, Raul Dominguez. Raul joins us after about 20 years in the private sector in HOA and POA management. He's really hit the ground running the past month, getting up to speed on all of our capital projects, and he will be working directly with me and this Planning Commission as we move forward with updating a capital improvements plan this year. That'll be a very labor-intensive process with a lot of public engagement and bringing that to the Planning Commission prior to that going to council for adoption. But I just wanted to introduce him tonight while we had all of you here, and we were both here working on a few things.
Good evening. I just want to say it's a pleasure and an honor to serve our city. So I look forward to working with each and every one of you as we move projects forward for the city of Beaufort. Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you.
Welcome.
Yeah, well, welcome aboard. Good luck.
All right, is there any questions relating to military operations? Hearing none, moving forward onto the new business. We have the annexation and rezoning of CCC Reserve at Broad River.
I know that was in the amended agenda has been removed, but they have requested in the meantime to actually have that formally tabled to the next meeting. So we would need a motion and a second if you choose to do so, right? If that is done, then the item would be heard. It wouldn't have to be re-advertised, which is a lengthy advertisement for an annexation. It's 30 days. So if that's okay with you, we just need a motion on that.
I think
So
so.
moved.
Um,
I'd like to see it re-advertised. So that people know that when the item is going to be before the commission. They thought it was supposed to be tonight and it was canceled. And I think that we owe it to the public to announce when they're coming back to present.
Have you been contacted by anybody in advance of this that had an interest in it?
I've not, but there might be people here. And that's the whole point of if you
Yeah.
did table it at the meeting is that, essentially anybody that was noticed would was to be at the meeting and could speak on the matter and would also be notified and present if you table it to another meeting.
all right, do we want to hear public comments before we table it?
There's a lady over.
Over there, Benji.
It's the name of a company, I'm
The
pretty sure.
company.
It's a company.
His name.
I don't think,
I think you'll have to come up to,
Well,
you have to come up to make comments. If it's.
I guess the question is anybody here for it, right? Why don't you just,
yeah.
Mr. Chairman, just ask that question?
Yeah, just by a raise of hand, is anybody here to make a public comment for this project?
Or is just here to hear
no,
this application?
Or it's just here for this application? Well, I think, yeah, I think
Is it
we
a big
just need,
deal to re-advertise?
Um,
I mean, I'm not, that, since one of the commissioners asked.
it's just a 30-day notice, which may be too late to
Yeah, that would be the,
hit. But we can certainly send letters out. If that would be, or to the property owners, again, just reminding them.
how many, you don't know how many were in the first?
Offhand, no, there's not as many as you might think.
I would say that if, maybe just send out the notices again, rather than go through the trouble of the newspaper notice. Would that be enough?
Send a letter out?
Send the notice rather than advertise the notice.
Exactly, send a notice.
Yeah, and that way they
Give
don't have a
folks
problem.
chance.
That way they don't forfeit we don't run into the 30-day problem.
Okay.
I mean, I'd make a motion to go ahead and continue it to the next meeting, as long as you send out, pretty quickly here at the mail notice.
all right,
Well,
Is there, go ahead, Kim.
I was just wondering, there was a motion on the table from Mr. Hallman. So are we using that
Was there-
motion with an amendment?
Oh, there was what was the motion?
I moved to table it.
Can we just take a friendly amendment to add the mail notice since, yeah.
So moved.
I'd like to ask one question. Is there any risk in your view that in the event we act on it next meeting without the citizen or someone might allege that we've failed to give proper notice?
Well, proper notice was given to this meeting, so tabling it to another meeting is, perfectly proper. So, yeah, I don't think there's any legal issue at all.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right.
all right. So we have a motion. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
All right, we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion, is there any opposed? Hearing none. Motion passes. All right, jumping on to rezoning. The application is requesting rezoning of Cuthbert Park located off Lafayette Street behind the National Cemetery. Take it away, Kurt.
Sure, let me just get there, sorry. I had all the annexation stuff ahead of this. Luminous. There we go. Okay. That's not. Oh, okay. First, do we have to give a presentation and then they open it up to public? Is that-
Are also not.
Okay, okay,
Sure,
but
problem.
after this, though, he's gonna open it up to public hearing. And
Okay,
You
that
can,
was-
you just have to get up here and state that to them and
Yeah, I apologize. So the process for this meeting is we'll get the staff to do the staff presentation. And then after the staff presentation, we'll open it up to public comments. And then I'd say about, if you could keep it about 3 minutes each, that would be great. And try not to repeat any comments that were already made. And then we'll jump on to board discussions and then we'll do a board decision. All right.
That's assuming that the city is the applicant. correct?
Yes, so this is a request from the city, is making this request to rezone Cuthbert Park, which is kind of highlighted in the kind of the light blue or turquoise color on your screen. To rezone that from T3S, which is a suburban residential district, which allows 9,000 square foot lots, basically suburban lots and churches is essentially the uses that are allowed, to a T1 district, which is a natural preserve district. And so the T1 district does not allow any building. It really doesn't allow anything but either open space or well, really open space. It's pretty much it. It's, as it's stated, it's a natural preserve is what's allowed. So that's what's been requested. It has been requested by the city. There's no specific address to this, so the tax map number is right there, 120-001-000-0293-0000. So just so that, put that into the record, so everybody knows what it allowed. So basically, you're going from potential suburban development, even though the city owns it, to no developments allowed. So that's the goal here tonight. The zoning that I discussed, so all of that doesn't, hopefully that shows up to everybody on the screen a lot better than on the computer screen, but essentially the kind of the yellowish color is the T3S, and the purplish color, I believe is T3N. So you can see that around it, and then north of that, the white is essentially the wetland waterfront kind of area. So everybody has their bearings. You can see where it's located at the, basically the end of Cuthbert Street. If everybody knows where you're looking at. Currently, it has basically been used as basically an open space, natural open space. I believe some of the residents are here, and they've basically petitioned for the city to rezone this so it stays in a natural preserve or open space setting in perpetuity. And so that's the thought behind this request that the city's making, is that it just adds an extra layer onto the property, so it should, shall not be developed in the future and preserved for open space. So if you look in your packet, you can see, so there's some findings for rezoning per the code, and there's also the section of the land use plan per the code. Let me just go to that real quick. So there's a little graphic there. So in the comprehensive plan, which we use to make decisions on rezonings, T1 is really an allowed use in almost any district. So if you decide a T1 use is appropriate, this is essentially a general urban intensity of use. That's definitely an allowed or recommended district per our land use plan. 9.16.3 is the finding of facts that you have to make to make this decision for the rezoning. Again, if you recommend for the rezoning based on these standards, it still goes to the city council. It will not be on the December meeting, because really they're only doing the transfer. Well, actually, it's not a transfer of power or swearing in, but that they're really not doing any new items. So it'll be January that this will go to the city council. But should you approve this, you would be making findings based on 9.613. These 6 things. So A, is it consistent with the comprehensive plan and civic master plan? I think I kind of addressed that the comprehensive plan and obviously the civic plan recommend T1 if appropriate in any district, especially in the general urban. 2, is it compatible with the present zoning, with conforming uses of nearby property and with the character of the neighborhood? It's currently being utilized as an open space, like kind of park, and I think that in a view corridor essentially to the water. So it definitely is, I think, conforming with the character of the area around it. The suitability of the property to be affected by I think we've kind of established that right now. It's an open space view shed, and that's what it's being used as, and we're just trying to formalize that, forever really. The compatibility with the natural features or archaeological or cultural resources on the property, again, I think I think this is a pretty good case where it meets all of these, where, it's being used as open space. It's been found to have some natural kind of features that the community wanted to save and buy and develop as that open space forever. And so this just kind of is doing that. E, the marketability of the property would be affected by property. Again, this is owned by the city, and is actually be utilizing for the district as open space, which the district would be what the district is meant for. And so finally, the availability of road, sewer, water, and stormwaters are generally suited or adequate for the affected property. So, this is kind of that's more for development. This is for really not developing it. So really that I don't think matters, but I don't know that there's anything really running to this property anyway, so that's perfect for this amendment. So anyway, this was noticed, everybody within a few hundred feet was noticed, and I think there's a lot of them here, and you can hear their comments, but it would go to the first meeting, depending on your opinion or the recommendation here, the first meeting in January to the city council for a formal vote from them, but there'll be 2 hearings with the city council after you make your recommendation based on the code. So that's all this I have, and I'll just put it back on that slide so everybody can see where it is. So.
All right, thanks, Kurt. We'll open it up to public comments, please.
Can we ask questions?
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah. I think we have some questions, Kurt.
I had 2 questions for you, Kurt. One was, what is the current acreage of that area?
Oh, man. It's not too big. I thought it was a little over a quarter acre. So
It was pretty small, about
yeah,
a
it's
quarter of
pretty
an
small.
acre.
It's a pretty small site, but I think they
9,000
might know
square feet.
offhand. I could find out while we're sitting here.
Oh, okay, that's a code requirement.
Yeah, I didn't see anything.
Something.
Yeah, if we go farther, I'd like to know what that is, because that might have.
I've got the very same question. So once
that
Kurt,
might have an implication as to where we go with it. And my second question is, since the city is recommending this, who from the city or which part of the city is doing this recommendation?
I mean, can you mean who from the city?
Yeah, who is implementing this? I know that there's been requests from the community, but who from the city is actually taking this forward?
Well, I was told, the city manager essentially authorized the request.
Okay, so the
He's
city
the chief
manager is asking you
executive
to
of the
take it forward.
City, so yes. And I'll find out the size in just a second if you guys have more questions.
is city council opined on this at this stage?
They have not, not opined, no, but they will make the final decision to approve it or not.
What responsibility does the city have to maintain this, presuming that it goes to the T1? Are there costs involved in maintaining this and when the city?
It's already being used as a, here we go. Basically a view corridor, I guess, for lack of a better term. So I don't think it would change really anything.
So it sounds like it wouldn't change anything from what the city is
Actually,
spending today.
Actually, it's a 1.25 acres, as per the county's website, so. You can see right here. So it's a lot bigger than,
So the city will maintain it in its current condition.
the city owns it. The city will it'll continue to operate as it is operating now, if you rezone it.
Kurt, are all the city parks zoned, on?
A lot of them are, but I can't say that all of them are.
Oh, so there's no standard way of dealing with city parks in terms of zoning?
I don't think so. It appears in 2017 and 18 that they did rezone most of them to T1, but not all of them. But yeah, some of them, I think specifically did not get zoned to T1. I really can't tell you why.
Okay, so just
Kurt?
curious.
I have a question. Would it be fair to say that basically nothing would change as a result of this zoning change, except in the case of a future sale of the property?
Right, so a future sale of the property, can't imagine anybody would buy it, but with open space, but they would need to petition the planning commission, the city council to amend the zoning to do anything but open space on it. So it adds another layer of protection to the property. So, I mean, you could obviously do a lot of other things too, but it just adds another layer of protection.
So the city could still sell it if they wanted to, even under this jurisdiction.
Yeah, it could still sell it. It's just, it would be sold as open space, essentially with T, and, you know, obviously, if they sold it to someone else, they could make a request, a petition to you, and the city could consider that on its merits, you know, 100 years from now, so.
Well, under current zoning, you could build residences on that property right now, could you
That's
not?
right. You could split it up into, you know, 9,000 square foot lots. So, you know, you've got a 1.25 acres. So, you know, that's looking at probably, you probably fit, you know, 5, 6 lots in there. And you could do that as a minor subdivision if the city did. That means no new roads. It would just be administratively approved and no one would be noticed. So.
But that, of course, would be under the circumstances that the city would agree to a sale in the first place.
That's right. That's right. And so the sale would obviously require a.
Does anyone know the history of this piece of property? Perhaps someone in the audience can tell us how the city came to own this piece of property and why it was zoned. Its current zoning T3N, I believe.
I can tell you it's been owned by the city at least till 2014, but maybe we can go a little further, but 2012. And then usually there's a little more information on, you know, for people that look at this a lot. So, but for some reason, it's just not provided, so. Sure. And so I think if you're done with questions, I can always come back up and you can go
Yeah.
to the public hearing and yeah.
Yeah, I think let's go ahead and jump on to public comments. Please come up to the podium. I think there's a sign-in sheet on the podium. Please state your name and address and introduce yourself.
Hello, lady and gentlemen. My name is Kay Merrill. I live at 813 Augusta Place in Pigeon Point. I am chairman of the Pigeon Point neighborhood. And I would just like to give you a little anecdotal information about this property. My uncle Mills Kinghorn was born in Beaufort in 1914. And in his written recollections of growing up in Beaufort, and particularly he later built a home on Pigeon Point Road in Beaufort. He referred to this area, and Paul, you may know this story as well, as Horsehole Park. Are we all going with that? His comment was that almost every household in those days, and he grew up on the point, had one either horse, cow, maybe something like that. And when an animal passed away, what do you do in a city with the body of a big animal? And so they were carted to this park and thrown over into the river, therefore Horsehole Park. Needless to say, that hasn't happened for a while. I have no idea who has owned it over the years, but I can tell you that it is a treasure to our neighborhood. And actually, it's not located legally in Pigeon Point. It's legally in Higginsonville, but it's right on the border. And we have everybody sort of west of Boundary Street is very in tune to what goes on in our joined neighborhoods. And it's a lovely piece of property. It would be a tragedy to see it developed. And I ask you to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, could you fill out the form?
Oh, yeah, sorry. What do I need to do? I don't see a form, Kurt. There's not one, but that's okay.
We'll just get it done.
Here, Kurt,
Hi, I'm Linda Berg,
it's a plain piece of paper.
2005 Cuthbert. And I made this request because lots of us enjoy the park, and I noticed that it was an error on somebody's part to label it as a residential site, and thought it could be corrected as protection, as has been mentioned. Nate from Public Works has been helpful in installing swings there for all the neighborhood to use. Lots of dog walkers, and a dog station has been installed. There are also picnic tables there that have been there since before I moved in. And there are parking spaces. So the town, does maintain it, plants flowers, this kind of stuff, and it's well used. I'd like to protect it and keep it at that use. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think probably one more comment would be that we might want to look at all of the parks and make sure that they are protected, because there might be others that lack the T1 preservation.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Frances Ackerman. I live at 2215 Wilson Drive, and I also want to share a piece of anecdotal information. Approximately 5 or 6 years ago, I was taking two elderly neighbors, for one being Donnie Ann Beer and the other being May Lipyanka, for their weekly ride in my golf cart, and we went down to Cuthbert Park as we often did. We found there a couple, I would say approximately in their 60s. They were not from our neighborhood. The woman had just completed her cancer treatment. And as you know, that's an arduous process. And we welcomed them and asked them why they were there. And they said they were long-term Beaufortonians, and the space gave them solace. And during the woman's treatment, they had visited often, and they could think of no better place to visit at that time while she was still alive and at the completion of her treatment than that location. So this park is known of and enjoyed by people other than the citizens of Pigeon Point and Higginsonville. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. All right, anybody else have any comments? Is there any virtually?
No, sir.
All right, we'll open it up for discussion.
I've got a comment if I may. It's a very lovely park. I was down there today and spent a good bit of time down there, but I'm going to vote against this request. And the reason is, city needs to keep its options open. It's a park. I can't imagine it's going to be changed into something else, but the city needs to maintain the option to do so at X point in the future, should they deem it wise. And so adding this extra layer of protection, if that's what you want to call it, is unwise in my view, for essentially, thank you very much for your comment just a moment ago about the folks not from your neighborhood, but this is essentially your little pocket park. City has just authorized $300,000 or $400,000 for new playground equipment at Pigeon Point Park. We've got Southside Park we're spending millions on. We've got big problems with our waterfront park. I think just maintaining this little Cuthbert Park as is for the time being under the zoning that it's currently under is the best decision for the city.
All right. Any other comments?
I don't have a problem with it. I'm willing to vote for it.
Yeah, I'm the same. Me and my wife come to this park every now and then. It's just a really fabulous lot that I'd hate to see developed.
I don't think, I don't think anybody in the city has got any intention of developing this in the way that the zoning would allow it to. However, it's possible, but as Kurt said earlier, even if we redesignate the zoning on this, it still could be sold to somebody in the future, just make it harder for them. I guess I'm more of a preservationist, and I'd like to see, it's a small park, and I'd like to see as many of these maintained as possible with everything else changing around us in the city. I think that I would vote against or for this.
Rezoning.
Yes.
I'm in favor of the proposed change to T1. Nice little park. My wife and I have gone over there a few times too, and it's really nice to sit there. So I'd like to see it stay as a T1 natural preserve. Have enough going on within the city in terms of housing and structures and stuff. We don't need to impact a view like that with more structures and more buildings.
I understand Mr. Traff's concerns about the larger issues that are going on in our city and particularly our waterfront park. And also the importance of keeping options open for city government. But I too am in favor of this rezoning. The city's still going to own it. They're not giving up any ownership rights. And the zoning change is something that could in the future be undone by the petition process, just like this process is happening right now. So also the idea that it's been used as a park for a very long time impresses me. And I think that that's very important in terms of preserving the character of our city. So I am in favor.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a motion?
Go for it.
Okay, I appreciate all the comments, so therefore, I would move that we recommend to the city council that they rezone this property to the T1 zoning district based on the staff report, on the comments of the public and comments of commissioners here today, that this complies with the comprehensive plan.
Bill, I think
Is there a second on
we
that?
make a decision here today at a public hearing.
We have a
We
second
need
on
to,
that
we
motion.
need to make findings. I'm just asking you
Oh.
if you would consider amending your motion to, based on the findings set forth in the
That's what I
staff
did.
report.
That's what I did. I based it on the staff report and the comments.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
Oh, I'm sorry.
To do that.
Yeah, I did that.
So, thank you for clarifying.
Yep.
All right.
I'll second it.
All right. By raise of hands, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion passes.
For the people in the crowd, they'll be January 14th at 7 o'clock will be the first hearing at the city council. So January 14th.
All right. Thanks, everyone. All right, well, moving along. So we're going on to old business, the Beaufort Development Code changes. Kurt, I'll let you lead that one.
I don't know if we have an audience for this, but I think to summarize, we've been talking about this for a few months. So again, just to give you a 10,000 foot level on what you're doing today, you are strengthening the infrastructure requirements, street requirements, park and open space requirements. And then you are essentially creating a process that is, I guess, more transparent in the fact that all of the plating processes are now being heard and approved with public hearings by the planning commission with clear standards, or hopefully clear standards that we're working through. So that's the goal of what you're doing here today. Most of that stuff right now is, it does not come to a public hearing. And so, that's really the crux, I think, of the issue, is that you're now empowering essentially the planning commission to make a lot of these decisions and with the light of day to the public. So with that, I think we got through most everything on chapter 7, but I do know that Kim had sent some comments right before the meeting, and I was in a meeting before this meeting, so I didn't get the chance to look at them, but Julie did print them out. They're at your desk or the dais there. But I think the goal here is, do you feel confident? And let's talk through any changes in chapter 7, or if you feel confident with it, it could be moved on to council tonight with changes. You obviously, if there's some specific things, we can prove it with those specific things being changed with the motion. Or, if you would like to continue the discussion and bring up items, definitely discuss them tonight. And then, have another hearing again next in December. I think 16th is your next meeting, 5 o'clock. So it's really up to you how you want to do it, but
So I think, so we went through chapter 7. We haven't really quite gotten to chapter 9, and I think that's something that we should.
that is advertised here tonight. So, if you'd like to get into chapter 9, you just haven't made it there in your work session. So.
If we start with chapter 9, Mr. Chairman, I would like to go back to 5 because I'm not ready yet to say that 5 is ready to recommend to the city council. So if you want to start with 7 and go back, or just go through 9 and then come back to 7. There's some cleanup that has to be done to 7,
Okay.
both some just little things and then just a couple of
Yeah.
sort of main things.
Yeah, I definitely think we need to approve.
But I would love to be able to knock it out, if we can.
I mean, there's a lot of overlap between 7 and 9, so I don't want to approve
Right.
7 without reviewing 9.
So whichever one you want to start on, I just want to make sure we go back to 7 if we start on 9.
Might be useful, if I can recommend, to maybe go to each member and we can maybe clear up their specific issues, because we've already gone through the whole thing, right? By line. And so I don't know that it would be useful to go by line tonight. So maybe it would be best, if this is just my recommendation, to go, each person kind of bring up issues that they see, and maybe we can identify this at this meeting. And then, if that's the goal, is not to approve it tonight, to have those fixed by the work session, which is first Tuesday in December, which is what, the 3rd of December, I believe, at 3 o'clock.
Yes,
That's right.
yes, that's correct.
And so we could have those, I could have those ready by the 3rd of December. And then that would be ready by December.
Are you talking about 7 or 9 or both?
I mean, I think you've been focused on chapter 7 so far. We haven't really gotten into chapter 9, but my recommendation was maybe each person can talk about any issues in the public on chapter 7 and
Oh,
then maybe
7,
go to
okay.
chapter 9, and maybe I think we've gone line by line, right? And so if you have additional things that maybe will speed it up instead of the laborious kind of we don't want to do that again. We've already done it a few times.
I think it would be-
Going back to chapter 9, I think you've already received my comments on chapter 9.
Yeah.
The early ones, so.
Yeah.
I can kick that off because I have just a couple of comments.
It's on 9.
On chapter 7. I think we're
Chapter
sticking on
7.
chapter 7, on comments on chapter 7, and we'll just.
All right, before we get started, Kimberly, did you?
Yeah,
I
I
have
just want to
some.
make a point. I think it would be more efficient and much easier to keep track of these comments if we would go by code section. And if anybody has a comment on the code section, it'll be easier to write them down and make sure we catch
I
everything.
think so.
Okay.
Otherwise, we'll be going over, each person will go, through the whole thing, and then it's better to start from the beginning, I think.
I had one question though, before we get started with that. And that is that, I believe when we met the last time that we talked about, taking, an additive approach to each of the sections as related to, minor and major, subdivisions. And that we were going to do an additive, as opposed to recount, of the new sections, but I don't see that in here. I just.
Yeah, I looked at doing that and, I didn't think we were, I'll be honest, I didn't think we could get through it, but, there was just a lot of stuff that didn't overlap, I thought, and I didn't see the harm but that, again, if you don't agree, then you can give me that direction.
Totally disagree.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should do it that way. And I think I was the one who brought that up, was when you're dealing with a sketch plan and a preliminary plan and a final plat. When you go, there's so many things on the sketch plan. And I was trying to, when I got the preliminary plat and then the final plat, I was trying to say, well, I wonder, are these the same things? Are they more things? Which ones compare? And the numbering was different and all that sort of thing. And it got almost impossible for me. So I'm thinking, if I'm an engineer and I'm just trying to think, okay, I'm at the preliminary plat stage now, what am I need to add to this plat in addition to what I already should show on it because it was on the sketch plat? And I think it's just really hard for a planner to figure out what he's adding, just the way that it's done. And if it's an additive approach, he just goes back to the earlier plat that's already been approved by us, and he says, okay, these are the things that I need to add to that to make that sketch plat a preliminary plat and so forth. So that's gonna take a little bit of work on your part, but it can be done. And, because I'm thinking of the end user here.
Sure. One suggestion could be a table instead of, it's kind of like the second page here, be a long table, but, could do it that way as well.
Well, it's very confusing for it, and I'm seconding what Bill's talking about in terms of
Okay.
dealing with these plans and from an engineering standpoint, the design firm having to work their way through these various levels and repeating itself and not repeating. You get lost in the woods. It's very difficult for an engineering firm.
Well, I think, that's a comment that we'll just make that change for the work session and, I think it'll just state that all items required in section, whatever it is, final plat or preliminary plat section are required for the final plat in addition to X, 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 and X, right?
Right.
Okay, we'll do that.
I think tables are great, but there's a
That might
lot
be a
of
long
stuff
table.
here. It may be kind of hard.
It's
to
just an
do that.
idea I was thinking off the cuff, but, yeah, that might be a really big table. So,
So you're gonna do a rewrite, Kurt, on that?
well, I will be, if that's the will, we'll just do that additive approach for those sections of,
Of
I think it's
five.
7, it starts in 7. Which page is that?
7.5.
Quite a bit down from here. Let's see here. Really, it starts in 7.5, so it's really section 7.5, so it'll be an additive approach for all with the site plan, so.
Yeah.
Be like an accordion, I guess, and it'll get bigger with.
I have one detail I'd like to bring up in respect to this, these drawings. It's on page 33. And it's, part of 7.53. Final plat C. And if you go to number 6, I think I'm on there. Construction drawings the sentence starts with construction drawings, landscape plans.
What page you on?
I'm on page
6.
33.
33.
That's the last paragraph above 7.54.
Oh, yeah.
Starts out with construction drawings, first phrase.
Yes.
Okay, well, it's saying that the construction drawings and final landscape are required to be submitted before the final plat process or concurrently with the final plat process. Why would I want to submit construction drawings for permits if I don't have approved plat plans? Then I have to go back and change the construction drawings to re-up them so that they meet whatever was finalized on the plat plans. The construction plan should be the last, once all the plats are approved, then the construction plan should be submitted. Not at the same time. That's how I read this paragraph. Now, if I'm misinterpreting it, let me know.
Well, it says they're submitted,
Concurrently.
you can submit it concurrently. You don't have to submit it. It says before or concurrently.
Right, and I'm saying, why would I want to submit them at the same time when I don't have an approved plat? If I'm the client, the designer. Why would I want to do that?
It's,
Well, I think that's the final, for us, that's our final check.
this is in the section about final plat approval.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Check to make sure
that
you
same
did.
thought came to me. It's in the section about the final plat, when presumably you'd be at the end of the process anyway. It doesn't seem to be out of place to me.
Okay. Final plat, all right,
It meant to be the final check for us.
Okay.
Okay.
for you.
all right, it's a little, as I said, it's a little thick.
I was looking at.
So you're okay with it then?
I'm
Huh?
thinking.
Well, I spoke at length last time about, from my experience with final plat. A final plat is is really meant to be the plat that's put to record from which you sell lots off of. And so my experience has been that you usually do your construction plans first, because you can construct the whole thing before you plot it to record, so you don't have to bond all the improvements. But Kurt, you took a different position on that, but
I think
just
it has.
that's a better process when it comes to subdivisions, because it's important to understand what we're talking about here. This is not a site plan like building a shopping center. It's building a subdivision plan is, whether it's a sketch plan, whether it's a preliminary plat, whether it's a final plat. It's a drawing that allows you to divide something
Wow.
and sell it,
Yeah.
you know? And because a major plat has a lot of infrastructure incident to it, oftentimes, you either have to bond it, or if it's built, then you don't have to bond it all. And because bonds are expensive and they're hard to get, a lot of times you like to construct it all before you go to final record. And that's the experience I've had over the years. So to me, it's all a little bit strange the way it's written, but ordinarily the construction documents would be done first, and you'd build it before you go to record. The record plat is the last thing. I mean,
And that's the way it's meant to be.
and
here.
that's, yeah.
So-
But, a person can do it either way. So I guess the way that it's said here is that construction drawings are required to be submitted before the final plat process or concurrently. So I guess that works that way.
I just had 2 points. On page 8.
Well, should we settle this, sorry,
Oh.
just so,
So I think the language works. Because it seems to more closely track the way that I'm experienced.
and then it just
doing
says
it.
that they must be to be deemed in substantial conformance, the appropriate sections prior to record, so it's giving a little leeway there too. So is everybody good with that? Should we move on to the next comment? Yes, sir.
I think I'm good with that.
Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sounds like page 8, I think I heard. Mr.
Yeah,
Allen.
page 8, there was one word there I would change. It's in the subheading of design. At the language that's inserted there on 3A, instead of the word constructability, which I find to be rather awkward, how about the word connection?
I think we came up with constructability in our work session, actually, but maybe the one work session you were not at.
Yeah,
We were
it would
creating-
have to be, because I would.
It was
I
a
would-
poetic work session where we were creating new words, so apologize for that.
Oh, no, don't apologize. If the group is in love with that word, far be it from me to, I just thought it was a strange word.
Yeah, the idea is that you don't just build it to the property line, you gotta take into account the elevations may change. So, if the idea is that the road on the future property would connect with the one, you gotta make sure that it's constructible when the road gets to the other side of the line. So I think that's how we came up with that word.
So would we? like
That was
to-
the idea,
Your
right?
recommendation is to go to what?
Connection.
Connection.
Because at the end of the day, that's what you're creating. But you know what, this is, I'm not gonna lay awake in bed tonight because this word's in the code.
But that was the idea. I think maybe Paul or somebody brought it up, or,
I think I brought it up and it was.
maybe you did, yeah.
It was basically if you've got
Right.
major natural obstacles there like
Right.
elevation
Right.
changes or
Right.
a huge rock that you can't move, I don't know, whatever.
Exactly.
So let
constructability.
let me just ask a question. Would you do anything differently at all if the word was connection as opposed to
Well,
constructability?
I think yes, because
Yeah.
that, it seems to me that the word constructability puts a bit of a burden on developer A to design his site
Right.
in a manner so that when developer B comes along to make that connection, if there's an obvious impasse, that developer A has some obligation, not just a dead end at an odd elevation, for example.
And so it was all about making the connection, but it's trying to make sure the connection is constructible in the future
Reasonable, yeah.
on property. B.
Okay, okay.
That was the idea there.
My only other comment is on page 12, under traffic control and signs. Near the end of the red inserted language, it reads that the developer shall be responsible for all or a portion of the signal installation. So how do we determine whether it's all, who determines that and how does that get figured out?
Well, we would, because we're the ones that approve the plan and the
We approve
GIS, and that
plans.
would be a condition,
That's right.
I mean, most of the time, the developer is or should be, because there's nobody else sitting around with a pot of money. But, if there's a way that he, if it can be shared with government or somebody else, I guess that's the idea.
How is it handled now, Kurt?
I don't know that there is a uniform way that it's handled. But likely what would happen is that it just really depends on the street too. I think
So-
that the mast arms in front of the Buford station that are new were actually, the city had to install them, but I believe they installed them with funds provided by the developer.
So I guess this will probably work, but I'm just wondering, why wouldn't a developer always take the position that I only have to provide a portion of it?
Well, we might not approve his plan, because we can put conditions of approval on our subdivision plans
Okay.
Well, I think that's why we
and on our
changed
development.
it to say that now it's the developer's responsibility
Well, not for all of it.
It still
Right.
says a portion.
or portion.
I just thought that maybe there's someplace else in the code that, yes, the planning commission will always have the final say-so on approving something, but this language says that the developer doesn't have to pay for all of it.
How do you define?
Well, there might be, just my experience is that when a new signal is required, it usually falls on the applicant who's before the planning commission, but there might be another applicant that's coming down the road and they can share it. And so sometimes there might be sharing among 2 or 3 developers, just depending on what's going on at that time, and
Okay.
that's the kind of thing, developers are always trying to get out of it and pass it along to
Oh,
somebody
absolutely.
else.
Absolutely.
Naturally, it makes sense. And so that's oftentimes the question is, can't I share it with so-and-so who's coming
Yeah.
in next month?
Okay,
You know,
that's it. That's all I had.
And that replaced basically traffic control, street name signs shall be installed at all street intersections as determined by the applicant and street owner. So it was not the best language in the world. So that's what it replaced.
Okay.
I've got a couple of quick comments, if I may. Please turn to page 6. Under little b, where it refers at the end of that paragraph to 7.2.1E, that should be changed to 7.2.1D on the next page over. Compensation is now section D.
Am I in the right place here, Paul, on the screen?
You're talking about in B.
Yeah, so I'm looking at on page 6 of the packet delivered to us today, paragraph little a says, in the case of in the case of a street section that is not part of an official map. At the end of that paragraph says that cost of improvements may be compensated. Then it says see section 7.2.1E. But it's really now D.
Apologies, yeah, I see that.
And then on page 30, big B, major subdivisions, 2.
Page 30?
Yep, page 30.
Yeah, it should be more than 5.
Number 2 should say 6 instead of 5, I believe.
Yeah, it should be either more than 5 or 6 or more,
Page 30.
because a minor plat is 5 or fewer, right?
Right.
However you want to say it.
You mean number 2? Is that?
Yep, number 2 should say 6
Instead
or
of-
more lots.
Good catch.
And then my final comment, we worked really hard on this chapter and I want to get through it just as badly as everyone does here. But I would ask Kurt, because when I read this several times, you know, when we're looking at various sections, 753 begins the 752, the minor subdivision process. And then going on to 753, the major, you know, we're doing a sketch plan, preliminary plan and final, and then we move into 754, basically goes through the same types of plans, and then we go to 755 and it's preliminary plat, preliminary. And I know you spoke that you're going to try to maybe consolidate some of this, but am I crazy or is some of this redundant? 756 talks about final plats. 757 minor subdivision plat.
Yeah, 753 is the process and types. It's kind of like a,
Can we maybe
Duplicate.
headline a process if it's, you know, maybe a title block ahead of those or something would be helpful, because
so you think that, if I'm to understand you correctly, so on page 30 and 31, so 75.3 kind of has the, what's the word, the
overview,
the overview of each type. You think that would be better just to be removed and if necessary, put in each section? Is that what I'm?
Well, I'm thinking so because
Specific sketch plan. Yeah, I think that makes some sense. Makes some sense if everybody else.
I mean, anything just to, you know, I can see a citizen or even the engineer looking at all this and it's, you know, you read it 2 or 3 times and you're still not 100% on it.
Yeah, I think it is maybe too redundant. So it was meant to make it easier to understand, but maybe in the process of that, it creates more confusion and bureaucracy that's unnecessary too.
So if there's any help that can be had there, that'd be wonderful. And I'm ready to move on.
Yeah, I hate to make you do it too, I mean, it would have been,
No, that's what I mean.
I mean, to me, in my mind, if you had a section that was minor plat, then sketch plat, then preliminary, and final, and within each of those, it was what was in contain, what the plan, what's required on the plan and what the process for that plan is. Instead of, because what we do is we do each one of those and then we come back to them again.
Yeah, so I,
And so if. you
makes
could-
some sense. But I do think we do have to keep the 7.5.2 because it is short and it just says what a minor subdivision is
yeah.
and a major subdivision.
No, I know,
So that works for.
but I know that what I just said might require a lot more work, but it seems to me that it would be easier if you just had one, if you had a
It'll
section
require a lot
for
more.
each one of these instead of
Yeah.
kind of going through them.
It's not gonna take very long at all, so, and, yeah, we'll take it out.
I have a comment on, as
It-
far as that process go, you have the pre-app before the preliminary plat, but not before the sketch plat. Wouldn't it be good to have the pre-app before the sketch plat? And that seems to be the time to have your pre-app at the very beginning of the whole thing.
And what page are you on there?
Well, I can show you where the.
So it's page 7.5.
Because the idea, I think if I'm correct, the idea of a pre-app doesn't show up until you're under this, the preliminary plat part. And let me see if I can find, I made a note on it, but. Excuse me?
Page 31?
Is it on 31? Let's see. On 31?
I see what you're saying. So a pre-application conference is in the preliminary plat,
Yeah, you should move it to,
the final plat, and then I think that would make.
I mean,
sense.
there's only.
Everybody agrees?
Let me ask
So
you, is
that's-
there, does it make sense to only have one pre-app at the very beginning of the thing, which is before the sketch plan instead of
Well, usually it's good to have a conference before they submit the preliminary plat too.
well, you can have them at both stages, but right now I don't think you have one in front of the sketch plan, do you? Or am I
Do
missing?
not, and I just got done with one right before I came to this meeting. So.
Pardon?
Just tapped one right before I came to this meeting, so that's.
I mean, there's so much, and that's what I'm gonna ask you about as well. There's so much stuff that we require on the sketch plat, including a preliminary traffic impact assessment. I'm thinking that if you're gonna put all that stuff on the sketch plat, you ought to have your pre-app before the whole darn thing.
Makes some sense.
Because anybody can, if they're confused at any of the subsequent steps along the process, they can set up a meeting with you and get with you again. But I think the most important is at the very beginning of the process, when they're trying to figure this whole regulation out.
Everybody else okay with that?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that.
Yes.
I'm also let me just ask this because the purpose of the sketch plat is, it says at 7.5.4 on page 33, it's a conceptual design submitted with blah, 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 that depicts, and it says what depicts. So my question is, if this is really preliminary, really, it's really begins the whole thing. And if the idea is, as I think it was expressed at a prior meeting of ours, for somebody to come through and kind of just show what they have in mind, so they know whether it's even worth the time. And I think you told us about an application somebody had, and then maybe it didn't go so well and they dropped the whole thing. Is it really necessary to have as much stuff on that sketch plan as you've got on there? For example, the preliminary traffic impact study. I don't know what a preliminary traffic impact study is. I mean, since it has to be prepared by a licensed traffic engineer, they're gonna spend a lot of money just to get a sketch plan together. And then it says a preliminary utility plan and proposed or required lift stations. My experience is that, and we've talked a little bit about this, but getting the utilities to do an assessment of whether the existing infrastructure has adequate capacity can take a fair bit of time, and they may put that all back on the applicant. So if the idea is to have a sketch plan that allows the applicant to get a sense of how we feel, maybe take a couple of those things off. So for example, on page 35, where it talks about what's in a sketch plan, I was thinking of taking the traffic impact study and the utility plan and the lift stations, and maybe something else, out of that sketch plan, because that's a pretty heavy commitment already on that applicant's part. If that's not what we want to do, is make them go to all that trouble when they're just trying to get an idea whether we're all on sort of the same wavelength. Because getting a sketch plan approved doesn't give them anything other than the authority to go to step 2, which is a preliminary plat.
Yeah,
Where do you see a TIA?
I guess it's a preliminary traffic impacts.
Well, it said, but it,
It just says preliminary traffic. I think that's just
Evaluates.
giving us
proposed
an
active
understanding of
plans.
what they're gonna deal, how they're gonna deal with traffic on that site.
well, it says,
says by licensed traffic engineer.
and it says any need for road improvements. You only really know what road improvements until you do that traffic impact study. And the road improvements you're usually talking about is it gonna require a center turn lane or not? Is it gonna require, dual lefts or single lefts, or there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I hear you. I
If,
think
if
my
you, if you,
contrary argument would be, even currently, is that, which is a fewfold. I hear what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense. However, a lot of the issues, especially with larger developments here, are entirely related to either their road system or their utility system. And if you were to give them a sketch plan approval, that could have been done, 3 years ago by a different planning commission. You're kind of giving them a feeling like, hey, I can get this approved, even if you don't know that the street or the road or the utility system is going to be handling it. So it's kind of a waste of time for everyone. Does that mean you're giving them maybe,
well, I don't.
both giving them a false promise and they're planning a project without really taking into account all of the impacts that
Well, I
are
think
really
here's what-
necessary?
Here's what I'm getting at, is I think somebody said at one of our meetings that, a sketch plan can just be something that's drawn by hand. Well, if you gotta have all of this other stuff with it, that's not the case at all.
Yeah,
All
and
I'm
it's
really
not meant
saying,
to
it
be the
really
case.
depends what a sketch plan is.
It's meant to be a pretty thorough look at
Okay.
it without engineering, to give them, I think, a pretty good feeling that if they go to engineering with preliminary plat, they're pretty much done. I think.
Well, I'm
that's
just
the
saying
goal.
the utility stuff is, I don't want to diminish the fact that these are some pretty
Yeah,
heavy lifts that
I mean,
requiring of an.
How do I explain this a little bit? And you don't have to agree with me. I'm just giving you
Yeah.
the push, but because we have a project in right now that, had we not known that there's a lift station, possible, and with their traffic concerns and road concerns, it would be really hard for me to bring this to you, because if those are both, because they're both up in the air without any information, I feel like you're putting the developer in a worse situation without knowing them, because you're giving them an approval on a project that might not work, right?
Well, yeah,
I'm agreeing with Kurt, and one of the reasons I am is because once they get that approval, they got 3.5 years before they have to come to the preliminary plat. And that's a lot of time to be wallowing around in something that you think is going to be okay without having enough information to really know that it's going to be okay.
yeah, I don't have a problem. Here's the thing, let me just make it for, where I've worked, we don't even have a sketch plan stage. We just have a preliminary and a final, or what we call a preliminary and a record. So this whole sketch thing is, to me, was an idea to allow people to come early in the process, to just come with their concept. But if we really want to have, utility plans and traffic impact study, I'm just saying it's not conceptual anymore.
Yeah.
So that's fine. It's just.
That's
Just
why
as
I'm
long as you
pulling
know
back.
that it's a pretty heavy lift on somebody
It's
to
to
do
give
such
you
things.
all the information and the developer you need to basically approve a project before they spend the money on the engineering, that they basically can make this work.
Yeah, but I'm
Right.
just saying, there's a
Paul?
lot of engineering.
There's another really important point here, we've diminished, a major subdivision is now 6 lots. So 6 lots, or 8 lots, is that going to generate 50 trips, to trigger a TIA to begin with? Probably not. And so, utilities may be a much simpler situation as well. So I mean, maybe there's an asterisk by these requirements for subdivision of
Or
oh,
a size.
X size or lots or something like that, where it might be required, because I could see a Salem Bay coming in and yeah, okay, they're gonna pony up the dollars
Yeah.
and provide some information, but a guy like, a local developer that wants to do 8 houses on a piece of family property or something, do a TIA, I don't know.
Would you say like 5 acres? I mean, I think that's kind of anything over 5 acres would be,
That
that's
would
kind of
make
a
more
more of a
sense to
major
me.
project where,
Remember, I don't really care. I'm just saying, I don't want people to think that this is all conceptual, because I think, all I'm saying is, I just want people to be aware, if they do it this way, it's a pretty heavy lift to have all the utilities more or less figured out and the traffic at the sketch plan stage. But if you want it that way, that's fine.
yeah, I mean, I think I think the reason why this was proposed is because of what's happened the last 4 or 5 years in Beaufort, in the city of Beaufort, and where the DRB and the Planning Commission, the MPC approved thousands of units of development that had no utilities. Or for that matter, any road improvements, and those have sat for years because they didn't have capacity.
When you
and-
say approved, are you talking about what stage of a sketch or a preliminary or a final?
Well, they got final, but I will say, because
Lot
when I first started here with the DRB, they had gone through like a concept, once when it got that conceptual approval, I think the DRB and the Planning Commission felt, and from what I could tell from the minutes and talking to the developers, they felt, the boards felt like, well, we've already heard this for a year. We've already given them a conceptual. Even if there isn't utilities, I think we owe it to them to approve it. And so I think this is a chance for because this is what we're really trying to do up front, is say, that's what I'm doing now. That's why you're not seeing so much stuff. It's like, look, there's no capacity at property X. You need to get with Beaufort Jasper to figure out if there's, otherwise we're wasting we're wasting your time, we're wasting our time, we're wasting their money and time. And so I think that's the goal of this, is to prevent that from happening in the future. So if you're gonna have a project, it's gonna have to have a realistic road look and utility look before we get down that road, because, you're gonna change every year. And 3 years from now, when they're at the end and they want a preliminary plat, but they don't have the utility capacity, but maybe now they're starting to have it, you might have approved something radically different, or you might feel like, hey, I have to approve this project, right? That new.
Well, let me ask it this way, because you got 3 different plats all coming before us, okay? They can't really, until after the preliminary one, they can't even start on their construction plans, okay? And they can't go to record until they have the final one. How important is the sketch one for us as opposed to you? I'm just throwing this out, is maybe what's important is the sketch plan is just at a staff stage, and then the planning commission, because each one of these is supposedly because if you look at what is our approval authority, well, each one of them, it's the same thing. Comp plan, civic master plan, and, whatever the other criteria are. And if we're saying when somebody comes through with a sketch plan, based on the comprehensive plan, the civic master plan, our development code, it complies with everything, are we setting ourselves up so that when it comes to preliminary plat, our hands are tied?
Well, I think that's
Because that's sort of what you're saying.
you have, you have a lot of experience in this, so it's a good discussion. So I would take the opposite view. And I would say that this gives the applicant the opportunity and the commission the opportunity to make these big level decisions on the suitability and your discretion to approve the project at this stage, because by the time it hits preliminary, we're talking about, does it meet the code and the engineering and all those standards? You're dotting all the i's and the t's. I don't think it's appropriate for that stage, because they're doing the engineering, for the commission, if they've never seen the project before to start saying, you know, I don't really like this road. This doesn't make sense that you're not connecting this road here. This doesn't make sense that you're.
But what I'm saying here is that so on sketch plan review, it says the same thing on preliminary plat and final. It says that it's consistent with the requirements of the development code, it's consistent with the comp plan, it's consistent with the civic master plan, so I'm just saying, so they come back at preliminary plan stage with just a little bit more information, you know? And we're having another whole hearing on it, and we've already determined that the thing at sketch plan stage complies with, you know, the comp plan, the development code, the civic master plan. How do you back out of it at that point in time?
Well, I think that's the goal, is that you can, once when you get that sketch plan approved, which I think you can make some, you can say, you know what, I don't think townhouses, or I don't think apartments, or I don't think single family makes sense over here. I don't think these street connections, without them doing all the engineering and the plating for that. I think that's the purpose of the sketch plan. So they're giving you a lot of information, not all of the information. You're making that decision, and then when it goes to preliminary, you're basically, that should be more of the, okay, look, they're doing everything that we agreed to, and they can put the money into it without knowing that you're gonna, you know, change your opinion. You're kind of
But,
locking it.
but that's my point. But for us to tell the guy at the sketch plan stage, we really don't like townhomes. We prefer it being, you know, separated, detached, single family with rear alley access. You know, was it really important that he have, you know, a utility plan and a traffic impact study for us at that point in time when we just told him, now you gotta go back and start from scratch? That's all I'm saying is if. the
Yeah, no, I hear
conceptual-
you.
Hey, Bill,
Yeah.
one of the things that, when I was writing some of this stuff up,
Yeah,
we did not have the ability to do the preliminary, site plan. We stopped at sketch plan. And so if I go back and I look
Right.
at, if I go back and look at this,
right.
given the fact that we're giving ourselves the preliminary plat, if I go to page 33 of 52, and I go to B3, and I change that to just say a current preliminary traffic study, which evaluates proposed access points,
Yeah,
rather than going through the full TIA. And that would be consistent then on page 35 under 16, the same thing. And we remove that so that the preliminary plat is the one that does the TIA. And I think when you do the preliminary, you have to do a TIA though.
oh, yeah. So one of the things that Mike says is real important for the people that weren't on the planning commission before, like he and I were. The way it is today is the planning commission is involved in the sketch plan, but after that, it's all staff. So what we're doing is saying we've just injected ourselves into all of the steps in the process. So I'm just trying to say, if, you know, it's kind of strange to do the same thing 3 times. And I was just trying to, all I was suggesting, and I'm just suggesting we might lessen a few of the burdens on the conceptual thing, which is the sketch, just so that people feel free, like they can come here with a sketch plan to see if we like it. And the only ones I was looking to take out is make it a little bit less on the traffic and a little bit, less on the utility plan. You know, for example, the lifts, location in any proposed and required lift stations.
But we could take that out of the,
That's all I'm saying.
out
I'm
of the
just trying
sketch
to-
plan
Right,
and leave it in the preliminary plan because we've got it there.
right.
too.
That's all I'm saying. I was just
If we
trying to
just
make
take
it
those two
more
things
consistent.
out, then
I can understand taking out what Mike said, but I would just caution, I think that was put in for the very reason I just stated, is because then you're leading the last 6 years of the city's development approval process from both the DRB and the MPC, where multiple projects that got approved that didn't have any utility capacity. And you know, it would be, I think that would be good for an applicant to know upfront and for you to have that information upfront. You know, do they have utilities, right? Because if they don't, then you're,
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of like you're approving a project that we shouldn't really be waiting.
Well, the most important thing to me when it comes to utilities is a letter from the utilities that says one thing. we have capacity for the plan that that's been presented, period,
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
problem is that
at the early stage.
we're getting a letter, but they didn't have capacity. So, because they didn't know what the capacity of their own system was. So I mean, I don't know what else to say other than that, but that was what was happening repeatedly here, so.
Yeah, Paul, did you have some?
I just wanted to
Oh, I
add,
understand that.
I think that whether you leave the TIA in the sketch plan or not, that it really should say a current preliminary traffic impact study as required by section such and such, wherever it is, because it says, you just need to clarify that if you're not gonna generate 50 trips, that you don't have to do it. So the guy that's gonna come in with a 2-lot subdivision doesn't have to worry about doing a traffic study is all
That's a
I'm
good
saying.
point.
Yeah, makes sense.
Well, that's, yeah.
Well, what we've talked about, maybe if I just name everything that I think Bill's brought up, and then maybe you can kind of give direction. I think A was the size, of the project, whether, and I think Paul also was stating that, so whether you think this should apply to everything, or we should do like a lot size or an overall size, so there's a exemption for it. I think that was the number one thing that was talked
I
about.
think if you just set the traffic impact study pursuant to the section that defines when you have to do it, you're good.
Yeah, no, I think that I will make that change. I'm talking about overall for this sketch plan section. I think if things were, so A was whether we wanted to apply to every project. I think that was Bill's original statement, whether you wanted to have like a 5-acre minimum or like 10 lots or 20 lot minimum.
Kind of
Or this
already
gets
went
triggered.
through that.
Did we, I didn't really write anything down that you,
Well,
Yes.
I had made a proposal which you disagreed with, and I agreed with your disagreement.
okay.
And that's how we got to the 5 lots.
Oh, no, I'm talking about Bill's originals, or Paul was bringing up that should someone go through this sketch plan project, like a small local developer, if they're not building like a Salem Bay. That was what was said like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
It should, you have, this doesn't get triggered for a certain acreage or a certain, I guess we've already said over 5 lots, but do we add an acreage so it doesn't get triggered?
No, we shouldn't change that. We should leave it. If we've agreed on 5
Okay.
lots, that's it.
Okay.
But that doesn't change the TIA, for example.
Okay, so next then there's the TIA and the utility plan. So I think Mike suggested removing Roman numeral 3 from the
Yeah,
sketch plan
just
purpose.
Yeah, just
I would
remove
still give you a lot of
those words I
information.
said.
Okay,
Is that everybody okay with that?
under sketch plan, sure.
And
Yeah.
then Paul has recommended where the preliminary plat and the final plat are, that it references the previous section for TIAs. Is that, everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, so we got that, and then now we were down to the utility plan, which is number 5 on page 34. I think Bill is recommending, his opinion is that, he doesn't believe that the existing capacity and future capacity of the system will be known, or that would be very difficult, and he would propose, I think, removing number 5. Was that what I'm gonna understand?
My experience has been sometimes that's the hardest thing and it can take a long time to figure that all out.
It will definitely be the
And,
hardest.
and particularly the way you've described you for Jasper Sewer and Water. When they come here with a sketch plan, we'll probably ask them all these questions, have you investigated, or you got more than just a real thin idea about where you're gonna whether you're gonna have capacity in a lot of those questions. But I don't know that they should have to
I
figure it
think-
all out.
I think we ought to have at a minimum a narrative, requiring a narrative of their
Right.
overall utility plan,
You know,
because then we can ask them questions.
yeah, general plan for utilities, something like that's all I'm saying.
I think
just
it's fine to ask for a capacity letter from Beaufort Jasper and a letter of serve from Dominion. I think that's fine.
That I'd like, yeah.
But, I will say this, I think that Beaufort Jasper really is on the verge of getting better. Honestly, I do.
Good.
And, I think they've got new leadership that's really going to help a lot. So keep my fingers crossed.
Paul, I've got a note on here for you on that.
Okay, so do we, again, I think the pro and the con, pro is to remove it is, Bill saying that could be a big lift. But con for me is this was specifically developed for the city of Beaufort to address the issues that you faced over the last few years where projects were going through this process that didn't have any capacity and they were getting approved. So it's, I think, again, that's for you. Do you want that information in there or you want to just change it to a capacity letter with, maybe a description of how this will, I think, which would you all like to do?
I think a capacity letter would be nice.
Yeah.
With a general plan for utilities.
Yes, that's fine for the sketch plan. I
So a
agree.
general plan, let me just.
I think as long as they're aware that it's gonna come up in the preliminary plot requirements, like they need to really think about, the capacity. And not have to backtrack quite a bit once they actually figure it out.
And I think we could, if we approve the sketch plan and they have minimal information about that, we could condition our approval on, getting that.
We certainly can.
Right. And one of the things about, because I'm guessing that we'll have if ever we got a decent sized subdivision again, we'll probably have a lot of conditions of approval at the sketch plan stage on what we want to see in the final, in the real traffic analysis, because we might just have a lot on that.
All right.
So I'll add capacity letter and general plan of utility connections
The thing that,
service.
and the original reason I wanted some of that stuff left in there, but Kurt, you're trying to put forward, was I didn't want to be in a situation where somebody has a piece of property for a major subdivision and they've got 3.5 years to just go out and shop it. And then somebody buys it and he's buying a pig in a poke because he hasn't got that information. But I guess that's his responsibility.
Okay, next.
Sounds good.
Hey, we're moving pretty quickly.
So anybody else have comments on chapter 7?
I'll just pretty much stand by my email comments. Some of them are about the little typos or things that were changed in one place and not in the other. So I just hope that in the next review that we can make sure that similar sections are worded similarly, that we maintain the planning commission involvement at all 3 stages, both on the approval and the extension. And when we refer to the standards that folks need to comply with, that we are specific. So that would mean the code, and it may mean the civic master plan or the strategic plan. Whatever they are, we should refer to them by title and do it consistently and just omit general references to city policy, because I don't think that that is helpful to applicants.
Do you just want to go through them all, since we
Well, we can, but I think some of them have been kind of covered by,
wrote them all down, so
well,
it wouldn't be too difficult.
just pointed out some
Just-
areas of inconsistencies between in the like on the timelines. 2 of them are worded pretty much the same, the preliminary and final, but the one for sketch plan is doesn't make it clear that you need to apply before your original approval runs out. So that's going to be pretty easy to do. And there were a couple of places that refers to administrator approval when I think we said we wanted to have planning commission.
Okay, so let's go to, is it okay if we go to 7.1.2 and just go down
well,
the list of these?
yeah, that's an
Because
example
I
of
think
a-
we might as well just clear it up while since
Okay.
7.1.2.c, which I think is existing language. As specifically provided herein or by city policy or agreement. And the reason I would say maybe we should leave agreement is because there are existing development agreements. The city has in effect,
Entered into?
specific developments that have their own infrastructure standards or improvement
I totally agree with that.
standards.
Leave
So
agreement,
Maybe
just take out
city
city
policy should probably be removed. If that's- Does everybody agree on that?
Yes.
It's on page 1.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think she has a good point. I don't know what the city policy would mean. I guess that's kind of a pretty. Everybody agrees on that. Page 1.
Well, that's dealing with anything from sidewalks to anything we've just been talking about, right?
That's right. It's,
So I mean, that may be actually appropriate there. That's just a.
If there is a policy that applies, it should be identified. But I think the policies are either in the code, in the civic master plan, in the strategic plan. I think that's where the policies are expressed. And this kind of language would probably have been helpful to the applicant who tabled their application today, because I think they made an effort to match up with criteria when they submitted their materials, but they weren't exactly using the same criteria as the code administrator was. And so that was the disconnect there. So I do think it is very important to identify what are the criteria by name of the policy so somebody can find it. I certainly think city policy should be complied with, but we need to know what it is.
Well, I'm not trying to nitpick here. I'm just. And generally agree, I don't like to have things vague, but this thing I think is talking about installation and construction of required improvements. And for example, a city policy might be that you only access for construction purposes your site through a temporary access point as opposed to utilizing the public street for that purpose. Or that you don't construct your connection and don't actually construct your connection until the construction work on the rest of the street is completed. Those are just typical things that the city is going to monitor. They don't, and so I'm just saying,
Well,
I don't think you can enumerate everything in terms of.
If there's
all.
a policy manual that contains those rules, we could refer to that. What I'm concerned about is policies that are not written down or properly identified.
Or whatever.
no, I don't know. I'm not.
I get it.
I don't have a problem taking out the words city policy. I can understand Kurt very well why you'd want to leave the word agreement in, and I think that should stay. But it won't be the end of the world if we take out by city policy.
They're gonna do what I said anyway.
Yeah.
Even if you don't have the words in there, because
Right.
it's just as a matter of practical fact, there's some policies are just.
All
So can we go to the next one?
Okay, so we'll remove city policy. I think the next one's right next to it, D, which is, line 3 should refer to improvements. Is that right? 7.1.2.
That's grammatical, my opinion. If you guys like improvement, that's fine too.
Yeah, probably should be consistent.
Oh, I see, improvements.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Next
Okay,
one,
it's 7.
the heck is no more, divided into 2 agencies, not too long ago. The agency that is applicable now, I've listed the name of it.
Good catch.
I did not even know that.
moving along.
The one about page 4, that's not really a code revision, but it was something that I noticed in the review of the last, of this last draft, the 52-page draft. And it says we're supposed to be periodically reviewing the official street network plan. I don't think we've done it. I don't know, Kurt, if you have that in mind for us to be doing at some point. And it's just in the nature of a reminder that the code does say that.
Okay, you said that's on page 4? I don't think I see it on page 4. Let's see.
Maybe I got the wrong.
Let's see, street, oh, maybe it does. Okay, so the city has previously said
Me too.
was incorporated, blah, 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 purpose. Per, will review on a regular, wow, or thereabouts. Yeah, that's, I mean, I guess I would recommend removing that because, one, the city doesn't even have a, I mean, we don't have an engineer, we don't really have we only have a few streets, so it's a little, I think it's,
So, I mean, that must have been added in when they decided to create the planning commission. So I don't know what.
no, it's part of the original code. It's just, it doesn't make a lot of sense in the fact that I mean, 6 months is almost impossible to be updating a plan and bureaucratically, and just 2, we only have a few streets that are owned by the city, so it's
Was the MPC doing that?
I really don't know, but it's in the original code, but
I suspect nobody,
the
I suspect
planning-
nobody was doing it.
I don't think anybody's been doing this. And it is interesting that it says the planning commission instead of the Metropolitan Planning
Right,
Commission,
that's,
so
that's what,
it's probably why it never got changed, so,
Why don't we just take it out?
The 6 month?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say.
Let's just take it out. Can everybody live with that?
take the whole section out.
The sentence out. Oh, the whole section.
yeah, so the
Oh,
the
okay.
review.
Why don't you just say that we'll review it on a periodic basis and just leave it like that and take out the timing? And that may mean we never get around to it, but. Why don't you just say that?
I would, if we never get it around to it, I'd rather take it out than have it in there and have us not do it. I would just
How
have,
about we review it if we want to review it?
There you go. The planning commission may review it. That's probably good.
then if we're gonna say they may review it, why don't we say from time to time?
It already has, it may be
That's fine.
modified or supplemented for the,
How's that for some good legalese?
May review it from time to time.
it already has that in there.
There you go.
It already says, the first sentence says the may be modified or supplemented. per the
I'd move
procedures.
on because it's not a big
Well,
deal.
should we remove the sentence or?
Yeah, let's remove the sentence.
I like.
I'm in favor of removing the sentence.
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
John.
All right, moving on.
Page 30.
This one, if Kurt is going to be reorganizing these sections to make it, clearer and not redundant, maybe he could just keep this comment in mind as he's doing that, to make it clear that I thought that there was some discussion that for a minor subdivision, 5 lots or less, you don't have to do all this stuff. And if I'm correct, if we don't want them to have to do all this stuff. So if we want to clarify which subdivisions have to do all the things, whatever the final list ends up being, I would suggest that we, clarify it in some fashion.
So I think you're saying that this doesn't seem clear to you, the way it's
It does
written.
not.
Okay. And so and so to you, what a minor subdivision, a major subdivision just doesn't seem clear. And so these 3 things are for each maybe, are you recommending like a catch-all or like a more clarification or? Because I mean, I think if I was to read this and I had no experience in this, I probably would agree with you, right? That's amendments. Adjustments.
Well, all of these things about sketch plan and stuff, all of that just pertains to a major subdivision.
So we could either add the word major, or we could add the clarifying language I suggested, subdivisions other than minor subdivisions.
7.5.3 is major subdivision process and application types. Isn't that right?
So I think she's saying that, yeah, so we add like a 4 and saying other than any subdivision, not other than a minor subdivision herein or something.
And I think
that
like
makes some sense.
some of that would be,
So like a 4 that says other than minor subdivision. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah.
What page are you on there?
It's page 30, I believe.
So 7.5.3 is that where it says subdivision process and application types. That only applies to major. So I think if you put the word major in the heading there, it's clear that all of those things, because 7.5.7 is where it tells you about what the minor subdivision is
Yeah,
all
I
about.
think that's a great idea. That would do the job.
Yep.
Say that again, which section? I'm sorry.
7.5.3, put the word major in front of subdivision
The heading.
in the heading.
You mean, right now I thought we were getting rid of 7.5.3.
Oh, you're rewriting it.
The point, the point is only this, Kurt, is the sketch, however you do it, the sketch plan, the preliminary plat, and the final plat only apply to major subdivisions. And that just has to be clear.
Okay, well,
That's, I think, what
maybe,
Kim is saying.
okay, well, maybe I clear up B that, I add that somehow and just say that,
Well, I think it's 7.5.3 that needs the clarification.
yeah, we're getting rid of 7.5.3 and then.
Okay, so then,
Yeah, I thought that
Faded
was going away.
yeah, if
That's
that's
kind of-
going away, then we don't need to deal with that.
What, you're getting rid of the whole,
and I mean, I think this is where it's also gonna overlap on chapter 9.3, the application requirements. It's got a chart basically that, the major subdivisions and the minor subdivisions have their kind of check marks on sketch plan, site plan. It'll probably need to be updated with a preliminary plan and
the
all
the
that.
point is, Kurt, is whether you get rid of it or not, just be clear that, because I think the question was that just in every, major subdivisions are what we're talking about when we're talking about sketch, preliminary, and final.
Yeah, okay, so I
Minor
think
plat doesn't have it
that
in
could
there.
be maybe further explained in the 7.5.2 under major subdivisions. So maybe
However you
there's just an
renumber it.
additional sentence in the beginning definition. A major subdivision, which includes the sketch, preliminary, final process, includes one or more of the following. Maybe that's something of that nature. Does that make sense to everybody? Or even in the beginning of 7.5.2, that's clarified with a sentence or something. Maybe methods of land subdivision and, maybe there's just, could either be there or under B, major subdivisions, just define this will follow the preliminary sketch, preliminary and final process. Does that
Yeah, I
work?
think, yeah.
I do think your next two comments, we don't have to address because we're getting rid of 7.5.3, so that actually gets rid of all of those.
Yeah, and just, let's just make sure we have the planning commission at both the approval and the extension stage involved in all sections that address that. And, it's just a consistency issue like some
Yeah.
of those others.
In fact, I think all of that will be deleted until page 40.
Now, when you say you're getting rid of that, you're just,
I'm incorporating
you're
it into-
incorporating it
But I
into
think
the
we'll
other.
have to,
yeah.
there is a reference, but there's a double reference which says the same thing, so I'll have to make sure that
Yeah,
the
because-
code administrator is not.
It's important stuff. You're not getting rid, you're just trying to incorporate it and get rid of the
Okay,
duplication.
so
All right,
page 40.
page 40. So where is this in page 40?
Criteria, I think maybe 2, the criteria for approval. Is that maybe what you're?
Yeah, that
referring
is
to?
that's what I'm talking about.
Use the following criteria to, so that would be 2, and then Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, and 4. Ooh, yeah. 4 is wrong. To update that.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
5. We must have deleted something out of that and the track changed, didn't it?
So actually, is 36, is that part of the section you're eliminating? We go back to 36. Because that was actually what started this comment.
36. Um, no,
Sketch plan review criteria. It
no,
says-
that's actually the actual
Yeah,
section.
so it says the city shall use the following criteria. And my question was, who are we talking about? Are we talking about the planning commission? Or are we talking about the code administrator?
Yes.
Both, and if we could specify.
I think hey, that's a good, see, man, I would be your junior associate if I was an attorney.
Well-
in one of your, firms, so I would never make it any further than that, but, yeah, that means the planning commission shall use, that should be the planning commission shall use the following criteria.
And so if there's any other part that we run across that talks about criteria, and I love that we have criteria stated, we just need to make
Yeah.
sure we use the correct identifier of who's supposed to be using criteria.
It's a good catch. Good catch. See if it's on the other ones here, preliminary plat, let's see. It actually says the planning, but then it says the city shall, so yeah, I have the, okay, so I'll update that on that as well.
Just do a word search for the city.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
We're about 10 till 7. I want to open it up to public comment before we keep moving
Everybody
forward.
else, have they had all of their?
I'm good.
Mike and Bill, have you had all of your?
Well, what page are you on?
Oh, any page?
Just 7 in general.
Oh, you just randomly.
Chapter
Yeah.
7 in general.
Okay,
It's
well,
like
yeah. I do.
Last call, I think.
Well, so just by way of example, when, I'm just gonna find it here. Page 42 of 52. Well, 41 of 52. And just when you're going through this, remember this whole additive process, Kurt. On 41 of 52, it's final plat standards, and you've got little I through little 24. And then you go to a number 3, and then you go to a number 4, but some of the things under number 4 are really things that should be part of the final plat standards.
I might be missing you, so that's page, which page?
That would be on 42.
42.
I'm just saying, when I looked at the two lists, because you got the number 2 list, which is final plat standards, and then you got the number 4 list. Now you're talking about scale and so forth. So you might just look and see if some of those things that are in number 4 should be in number 2. That's all I'm saying. It just-
Okay,
it
I
just-
think that's the
it look-
difference is that the one is for the plat and the other one's for the construction and engineering plans. That's the difference between the two, but,
Well, it looked like some of those things are also relevant to the plat, but I just take a look at that. That's all I'm saying.
okay.
But I do want to make, once you get to 7.5.8 site plan, I do have some comments on that.
Well, I think this is this is the
I'm-
time to talk about.
All right. So you've got this long list of things that should be on the site plan. I don't think, but correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we say in there any place about a traffic impact study. So it talks about the application, but the site plan application could very much have the TIA in there, right?
If it meets the, I think as Paul mentioned, it should be.
Well, we, someplace else, we spent some time at this. We have a whole long list of.
We have a whole long list, but it's
Of what-
50 trips, 50 peak hour trips. So that should be referenced in here.
So that would be,
But you know.
a
if you
TIA
built
as
a
required per section such and such. You gotta have
barber
that in there.
shop- If you build a barber shop, you wouldn't get triggered, but
Right.
if you build a
And also,
gas station, you would, right? So.
now you have final landscape plan and open space plan. Let me just ask about, do you not require any place in this code, a tree protection plan or a tree canopy protection plan? Because in the context, just thinking of, for example, that big shopping center, new one that we approved a few years ago, Mike, you know, and then it must have come to you guys, on the design review committee. I don't know how you can approve that without a tree
Well,
protection
It
plan.
has a landscaping and open space. Well,
But usually the tree protection plan
I
is something
can- I
different
can
than a
add that.
landscape
I-
plan.
will give you the proviso that the whole chapter is being completely redone. And so maybe I can add that, and then when we get to that chapter, which actually has already had a legal review, so it's actually had a few months of review. So hopefully this will be a lot quicker,
But
but maybe not.
It
but it's gonna
probably has
change
a
that.
tree, it probably has a tree protection component of it.
It changes, but yes, it even expands it even further, but yeah, let me add that. I think that's a good thing to add. And then when we're doing that chapter, we might have to come back to this to make a little update on this reference. So we should probably make a note of this.
Need to be a separate plan. I mean, a tree protection plan could be a required portion of the
Landscape plan, sure.
Yeah, however they do it in the context of that regulation, but it's real important. I just remember when we were reviewing that shopping center thing, I never felt comfortable with the fact, because I remember the people were saying at the time, oh, we'll save trees wherever we can, and that's usually it means they're not gonna save them at all.
I agree with you completely.
And so that's just the requirements of the traffic impact study as, you know, per section, whatever, and then the, however you want to do, but the landscape plan and the tree protection plan should be part of that. That's all.
I think that's a good catch.
And then down there in G where it talks about the public hearing and the criteria for approval, where there it says again, plan is consistent with the adopted plans and policies of the city. So that comes out. We want to see again the compliant with the consistent with the comp plan. Civic.
What page are you on?
That's on page 50.
That's just a second. Let me get to this.
That's under G 1, 2, and little a.
Down there at the bottom.
Yeah. So it's consistent with the.
1, 2, the plan requires system.
Consistent with the comprehensive plan, the civic master plan, instead of adopted plans and policies there.
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Okay, so it's on the screen there. That I'd be a junior associate forever. If I ever
And-
made it to that.
And then on little d there, and we did some conversation on this last time about, you know, how broad we want our authority, but right now it says the proposed plan conforms to the character of the neighborhood. But then it limits it to considering the location and type and height of buildings or structures and the type and extent of landscaping. Do we want to give ourselves a little more authority or, I mean, because if it just said conforms to the character of the neighborhood, that'd be really broad. And I'm not expressing an opinion on it, I'm just saying, but then when it says considering the location, it seems to be a limiting. And do we only want to limit it to the location and type and height
No.
of buildings, or, because I know you had a lot of feelings
Yeah, I
on
think
this,
this was
Mike.
the compromise a few work sessions ago on that. That's where I think that clause came from, so.
Yeah, so I just leave it, so Mike, you had a strong feelings on I think, on design.
Yes.
What page are you on?
That's on page 51 at the top there. Little D. Now,
I think you could just add a comma design somewhere in there.
so Kurt probably added, because you put in there the proposed plan
was
conforms to the
added.
building design standards of 4, and maybe that's, of course, I just want to make sure that, because this is our last shot at it, is just what
Yeah,
the planning
I think
commission.
you brought it up last time and you
Yeah.
felt it was too broad, and so that was added to narrow it. So I think.
Yeah.
So if you're fine with it, that's all I'm just pointing out, just
Yeah. I think
now
we
or
should
forever
add-
hold your peace.
I think you're right.
What would you like to change? Just so I can write it down. Paul's got it.
I'm sorry, I wanted to make one comment on Rule F.
On
What page?
Oh, all MPEX. Oh, yes, yes, F, yeah. You'd like to remove that or?
We've discussed this, but I'm asking if we shouldn't consider changing the word satisfactorily to reasonably.
I think that's a good suggestion.
Where are you?
We're just removing F altogether as being too broad, maybe?
That gonna be removed. I'm in favor of that.
Yeah, I am as well.
It's too broad.
Okay, I think we'll remove that.
Move little F.
And then we limited D.
Yeah, I don't have a problem. That was just a lot of conversation on that one, and you did change it a little bit. Yeah.
Changed it, but is that
Well, so let me ask you,
reasonable?
building standards in Article 4, is that something that is gonna come before us at some point in time?
Well, for a site plan, it would, because you're looking at the architecture,
Yeah,
so it would, in that case.
but it doesn't come up in will those standards also apply to, residential design of a subdivision?
This is for a site plan only, these factors.
No, I mean, just this Article 4, will those be code provisions that will deal with?
Well, you wouldn't be getting a site plan, you'd do. a
No, I
preliminary
understand that.
final.
No, I know, in this kind of, I'm just asking the question of building design standards in Article 4. We had talked that, we're going to review those at some point in time.
Oh, yeah, you're reviewing them, but yeah, they still apply, it's just the difference is if you're building a house, we would review them not with a discretionary board. If you were building an apartment, you'd be reviewing as a planning commission now. If you were building a house, it would just be a staff level review when you submitted the house. So if it's Salem Bay, all those houses just are a staff level review of chapter 4. Does that make sense?
So here's the thing, so, because we had talked about, do we want to have a low country vernacular for subdivisions? And if we do, once we get to chapter 4, we can talk about that, right?
Yeah, chapter 4 is the design standard section of the code and,
Okay, that's all I was wondering, is,
Yeah.
okay. I got it. Because that's, I think, Mike, you had some feelings about that.
Yes.
All right.
That's all I had.
Anything else on chapter 7? Otherwise, I'd open it up if there's any comments. Diane, do you have any final thoughts you want to share? We got your public or your written comments.
Oh, I do have one last thing on that, where we talk about the public hearing on the site plan. Did we ever deal, or maybe that's gonna be in chapter 9, where we deal with the issue of the public hearing in the zoning context? That shows up in chapter 9, does it?
hearings show up on chapter 9.
Yeah, other than, because we have a actual hearing in subdivision cases, we have an actual hearing in design cases, and whether we have an actual hearing in a zoning case, as opposed, that's something we'll bring up in chapter 9.
Right now, we're not proposing a hearing on that.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I did want to mention that a number of my comments were not considered in public comment at the work session. And so some of those are still not quite addressed. And in 7.5.6C1E, I understand you have my comments in front of you. I had a question in terms of, when there's an allowance to change a certain percentage of density, lots and density, that kind of thing in a sketch plan. And then it, again, in a preliminary plan, I mean, if it's cumulative, that means that it could represent over 25% increase overall from the initial sketch plan. And I wanted to know if any of you thought about that or would consider that. To me, over 25% is pretty significant change that would not have to come back to PC. It would just be allowed if that's cumulative. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I think it's page 36.
Well, 124 on the, if you have the. Every time I change it, you change the way you talk
Yeah,
about it.
it's hard to.
I don't have that document. I don't think.
Sure. 5, 6.
This right here, does not change, such as open space required by more than 10%, and does not change
Yeah,
more
well,
than
and
10%.
it's like in several places throughout, there are opportunities to, if not change by 10% here, or 50% here, or whatever, and if it's cumulative, it can add up to over 25%.
I think it's meant to just be 10% overall.
Also, it says 15%.
Does not change more than number of lots by more than 10%, and I think
Here,
you're
and
talking
then
about
if
the
you go-
final plat, I
And
think
then you
it
go to,
says.
and then you go to 7.6D1, it's over by more than 15%. 15% over what? Over the one
Approved
before?
in the,
That brings it way up over 25%.
does everybody understand what she's saying? So the sketch plan limits you to changing it when you go to preliminary to 10, or just to do a minor change up to 10% for anything. There's a minor amendment to it, whereas as you get into the plating, it goes, you can change it, I think,
But if it's already changed
But-
10% and you're doing 15% with that added 10%, now you're over 25%.
okay, so let's see. You know which standard that was here? 7.5.6. Which number that is? 7.5.6D1. Any measurable standard by more than 15% is the review criteria. So from a
actually is
preliminary
cumulative.
plat. No, it's from the preliminary plat. So the final plat review criteria does not change basically the preliminary plat more than 15% for any
But you
measurable
can
standard.
change from the sketch plan to the preliminary at 10%.
But that's just a measurable standard. It actually says you can't change a land use, or you can't change. You can only do one of these things. So it's kind of meant to just be minor things.
So if it's more than 15% from preliminary to final, they can't do that. They'd have to do a review again in the preliminary plat.
But what I'm saying is that they can do 10% from sketch to preliminary.
Mhm.
Now the public comes and sees the sketch plan. Now they're allowed to do 10% over, and the preliminary plan is approved. Now at final, you can do 15%, which means from the sketch plan, that's more than 25%, because it's the 10% original plus another 15% the increased area from the, or lots density, whatever it applies to. So what, is that what you want? That it can change over 25% from the initial sketch plan that homeowners get to, that residents get to see?
But the residents would be able to note the entire process, correct?
Um, I- that has actually been kind of unclear to me, but I guess so. When you get to final, that doesn't come back, does it, to public
Yeah,
comment? No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
but the final, I thought we have a hearing at every stage. I think it,
No.
well, let me see here. Okay, the code administrator.
I's and the T's, and then, the measurable standard, again, was really meant to be like we could clarify that it doesn't change. Well, do we want to clarify it's not extra lots or density with, that the density remains unchanged? Would that be acceptable to everyone here?
I think the administrator needs some degree of flexibility. And it's something that might come up.
Yeah, that was the intent that, hey, something comes up. Got a little leeway here, but I think her concern is that we could be increasing density of actual lots. So if you're okay with it, would you be okay with just that E gets clarified, that it is clear that it's not increasing density? That the administrator is not increasing density?
Yes.
Would that satisfy your,
Yes, thank you.
but they could at the sketch plan process because it's very conceptual, hey, maybe they just do 10% because they're not really sure what they've got, right? Okay, okay.
Thank you. And then I apologize for my 7.5.8 has to do with site plan. And that was very, very confusing to me whether it applied to minor or major, because sometimes minor was used, major was used. I think you may have addressed that, so I think we'll be okay with that. And also, I think some of the confusion in terms of the multiple lists, I like the idea of being additive rather than repetitive. But some of it, and this may have to do with the combined chapter 7 and chapter 9, is that some of it has to do with documentation and some of it has to do with process, and that's the difference. But as you're reading it as just a person, it's really hard to figure that out till you get like all the way through and cross-check and go backwards and forwards. Just something to consider. In terms of things that were discussed tonight, I know you spent a lot of time on the idea of the TIA utilities in the sketch plan. I was thinking the whole time that Mr. Barnwell, you had said about a pre-app coming before sketch plan. And I thought, well, couldn't all of that just be discussed at the pre-app and then you would know whether or not you needed it for sketch plan. To me, it seemed like a simple solution, something to think about. And I went to the neighborhood association meeting last week. So in terms of getting a letter.
What
from
neighborhood?
All the neighborhoods.
The city neighborhood association
Okay.
meeting where all the neighborhoods can come and
Okay,
there's a
okay.
presentation. Beaufort Jasper Water did a really thorough, kind of really interesting presentation. We had a chance to speak with some of them afterwards. And in terms of your requesting maybe just a letter to see if they can supply the utilities, I don't think that's going to solve your problem, because in my personal conversation with them after the meeting, she told me, I'm sorry, I didn't write her name down. She told me that they are mandated to provide utility service if you approve it for development. And we are approving development faster than they can actually supply the infrastructure. So you might want to think about
Well,
that.
I think, and I've been experienced with that too, is that they may be mandated, but they're not mandated to do it on any schedule. So they might,
So how does that help you in this process, having a letter at, sketch?
well,
plan?
the letter needs to say that utilities are available or they're.
Oh,
or-
whether they're available or not currently, is that what you're
Yeah,
saying?
yes.
Missed that point. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much. I
That- yeah.
appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
If
So
the
that's-
letter says no utilities are available, and we'll get to it, in our master plan 50 years from now, that application isn't gonna get approved at sketch plan stage.
Oh, Okay,
I don't think.
thank you. I didn't catch that part.
Yeah.
And let's see. Something that I did note, I did not note which section it was, but it says that they can actually start site preparation before approvals. And if at their peril, but I mean, okay, so shame on us, it's all, the trees are gone or whatever. And if the, what you were talking about, tree protection or tree canopy protection is part of the landscape plan, that comes later on in the project, site's already done, we lose. So it concerned me that there was this provision that they could start prepping the site before even approvals are made. I'm sorry, I did not write down that.
Preliminary grading was what you're referring
Bill, and well, we also, after preliminary, you can start installing infrastructure. So Bill and I had a pretty hour and a half, if you remember, an hour and a half long talk, that's pretty much consistent with the national policy or standard everywhere, is that, once when you get that preliminary approval, you can start infrastructure, grading and.
Because we call it preliminary, but it's a very serious set of drawings.
Grading, we're talking about grubbing, which is knocking down the tree.
I can't hear you.
Not grading, they're clearing the site. They're grubbing the site, which is removing whatever's there.
The
So it's
trees,
different.
yeah, that
It's not
concerns me.
Grading is when you flatten the site out.
Yeah, but is your concern that after the preliminary approval, the whole thing is not going to be approved later on?
So this was before preliminary approval, they, at their peril, they could start doing.
Where specifically are you talking about? Where in the code?
That's.
Well, I think, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting a lot. But I mean, the preliminary landscape and engineering and infrastructure plans are supposed to be followed, right? And so, I mean, that's just, we had a very long discussion on this, and that's just the the standard development process. So they still have to meet those things before they get to the plan. So I don't know that I have a good answer other than, that's just the way it's done.
I think I understand your concern, but I guess I'm trying to figure out what exactly you're trying to guard against with your concern?
What if the preliminary plat is not approved and they've already?
No,
knocked down
they
the
have to,
trees?
they have to get the preliminary plat approved before they're allowed to do that.
Language
So-
right here says on page 40, early grading, after approval of a preliminary plat, applicant may proceed with preliminary grading of the project area if a construction plan set for grading and drainage is approved and memo authorizing grading work is issued by the city engineer or code administrator. Early grading and storage of construction-related equipment is at the risk of the applicant and no presumption of any final plat approval if the planning commission is expressed or implied by any authorization of early grading.
So then preliminary is kind of set then.
Preliminary is set.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Then the last thing I want to say is, this has been a very long process. There have been lots of changes. There are still lots of changes to be made. And my caution to the council would be to not actually say, yes, I approve this chapter until you see a final revised clean copy. As we know, things have been missed over time and not everything has been included every time. So I would just caution you to, before you say yes, that you see a final copy.
Thank you.
Thank you very, very much for your.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so I think I'm on our work session. We'll jump on chapter 9. So if nothing else, let's jump on to the discussions. We have 3 discussions tonight. Here. Where is it? So the first is a public comment policy.
And you kind of dropped it up on your dais there.
What's that?
Do you have a copy of what Commissioner McKenna dropped on?
I was looking for it, but I guess like the copy from last time.
Yeah, I thought we had printed out and given it to you.
I can just reiterate it briefly. My suggestion is we don't make any changes to our policy that we use at these public meetings, like the regular meetings. But that at the work sessions, we continue to encourage advanced written comment from the public, and that we allow a period of time at the beginning of the session for public comment every work session, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, something like that. And then we only have more public comment during the work session at a request of a commissioner. So for example, like we did when we had the historic review interest there at our work sessions, and a lot of us had questions during our own discussion. We were able to ask them questions and found it very helpful to be able to get that information. And the work sessions are only 2 hours. So I think that, that's a good balance. And actually, I'd like to make a motion to the effect of we do that.
That sounds good. Is there any discussions, or do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, so we'll adopt that public comment policy at our work sessions. All right, next is the timelines. Is that is the schedule?
You talked about this at your last work session, if, I think you wanted to kind of set clear timelines for when you got packets and other items to
yep.
you for review, if that's what I remembered.
Yes.
If I wrote it down, so. I think right now it was, that was a week, what I think I heard, so if you wanted to make a motion or something to that effect, we can memorialize it. It's up to you, or if you want to change that, you want to have a different timeline for work sessions, different timeline for planning commission, it's up to you.
You're saying you can get the reports back to us a week ahead of the meeting, whether it's a work session or regular.
For both, obviously this week there was Veterans Days, we weren't here, so it came on Tuesday, but, provided that you understanding if there's a holiday, it'll probably be a day late, so.
How does that work with the public comments? Would they get it a week as well? And then when would we get written public comments?
I mean, public comments are really up to I don't know that the public can be set to that standard, right? Because you have to accept all public comments.
So they'll just come to us, it comes
They
into
come,
you.
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So
That sounds good. Oh, yeah, go ahead, Diane.
yeah, if you would like to clarify that as a policy that we post the packet a week ahead of time, we can definitely make that a reality.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's great. And if written public comments are received, especially for work sessions, if as you have been doing, if you could just email them to the members of the commissioner,
Sure.
of the
Sure,
commission.
do that.
All right, does anybody want to make a motion for that?
I'll make a motion. So
One week.
packets a week ahead, to commissioners and online. Email public comment, as received to members of the commission. And was there anything else? That's the motion.
That's the motion.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
All right. I don't think, is there any opposed? Sorry, I forgot to ask. All right, motion passes. All right, December Planning Commission meeting date and time.
This is a twofold item. Since the holidays are, fast upon us. Right now, it's scheduled for December 16th, and I just wanted to make sure, because there are a number of items on it, that you all are comfortable with that date, because if not, we have to reschedule right now, right, officially. So that was the first item of that.
You just want to make sure we have a quorum.
Yeah.
All right, I'll be there.
I'll be there.
I will.
That's fine.
All right.
Okay, sounds good. And two, just as a side note, if you all want to see any more of each other, if you wanted to have some kind of holiday event,
Secret Santa or
get
something.
together, or, code edit session, we can do that. That's all.
I live for planning commission meetings, so I would love to see commissioners outside of the city building. Nothing would make me happier. I would.
Yeah. that is it.
or maybe that's.
And-
the
Sounded like an
birthday after.
invitation to
And,
me.
and the public is invited too.
Should we RSVP right now or wait for the invite?
Well, I would have to consult with spousal management before I could, I would be crazy to,
I mean, if you wanted to have a lunch or a dinner or a brunch or just anything at all, we do, the reason I'm mentioning this is we do have to post it, which we do with the HRB a lot, right? So, but just it's a thought, it's a little team building, getting to know each other, maybe relax. It's completely up to you, but I just would need to know, and you guys can tell me a date. I do have to kind of notice it a day ahead of time, so.
Does the city provide liquor?
No, we don't.
I work at a place that makes liquor.
I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't hear anything. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I'm up for it if everybody else is.
Generally, every week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday can be made very open for me. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of any week. I work a part-time job Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So it would need to be maybe a little bit later in the evening, definitely on those days. But Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I can be very flexible.
Well, if you all want to think about that, and we can, the work session as your holiday, as your schedule starts to fill up, it might be a good time then to kind of set a time and figure out what you all want to do. And, it might be a good time to just have a little team bonding or something. Or eggnog drinking,
What's in the eggnog?
Sounds good. Sounds fun. All right. That's
I'll
it.
move to adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, and our senior planner will start in December. So I finally have a senior planner.
Say next summer or December?
December.
December, cool, awesome.
So it'll be the first time the city has been staffed in 3 or 4 years, I think, fully with all the positions we had. So that'll be nice.